Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pierce. This is a Ukraine war news update and I had to split my geopolitics video into two. This is the US component to that geopolitics video with most things here pertaining to the Ukraine war, broadly speaking. And yeah, sorry that there's just too much going on in the world to fit this all into one video. Some people have been saying my videos are too long at the moment, and they are correct. They are too long because too much is going on. Stop all this stuff, people. Just go home, take your football home, take your jumpers for goalposts, take your jumpers home. Just go and sit down, get a cup of tea, and just calm down a bit. Just everybody calm down. Let's try and live in peace with each other and harmony. Anyway, I think you might be able to now look forward to some US geopolitics news. Anyway, moving on, we're going to just quickly talk about the US. I think we do have time, but I'm going to have to make it quick. Okay, so the Kyiv Independent reports that the EU is prepared to step in if Trump withdraws from the $50 billion Ukraine loan. Oh my goodness, I hadn't even thought that Trump would do this, but my goodness, if the Europeans are having to pull out contingency measures because they're thinking that there's a good chance that Trump's going to pull out that, then basically Trump would just be working for Russia. It would just be doing things for the benefit of Russia. That would be absolutely staggering if that happened. And my goodness, if Trump does do that, then writing's on the wall. It tells you everything you need. Would tell you everything you need to know about the Trump regime. Polish Deputy Finance Minister said yesterday that the European Union is prepared to compensate if the US withdraws from the G7 $50 billion dollar multilateral loan agreement using the frozen Russian assets. Right. According to an aide, this is written in the Hill article, Tulsi Gabbard, who is up for the Director of the National Intelligence, as the aide says, quote, behind closed doors, people think she might be compromised. Like it's not hyperbole. There are members of our conference who think she's a Russian asset, that think she's an asset. That's how bad it is for Tulsi Gabbard. But the problem is you've got people like Pete Hegseth and these others that are now taking over the limelight to the, I think, detriment of her her badness, the amount that she's ill-equipped, ill-suited for the job of DNI. Now, Hegseth might well be actually replaced by Ron DeSantis. We'll come to that in a second, but be under no illusion. Tulsi Gabbard is a terrible pick for Director of National Intelligence. End of. Now, the FBI, together with international partners, has disrupted Kremlin's AI bot farm, spreading anti-Ukrainian sentiments. Reminder to everyone, there is no need to debate with the crypto and US Patriot accounts on X. That's US Patriot, scare quotes. Anyone that says they're US Patriot, generally, that kind of virtue signaling is usually a sign that they're a Russian troll or bot. Unless you're interested in arguing with AI. So there are just so many AI entities on the internet. Well, this article in DevX, FBI disrupts a Russian AI bot farm spreading Ukrainian information. We'll just quickly go through the beginning of this. The FBI, in collaboration with international partners, has seized control of a Russian-owned artificial intelligence-driven social media bot farm that spread propaganda on platforms like X, formerly Twitter. The bot farm was developed by Russia's state-of-the-art RT News network and operated by Russia's Moscow's Federal Security Service using AI. The Russian state-sponsored actors use a covert meliorator software to benefit Moscow's agenda. They acquired domain names from a US-based provider to create email servers that facilitated the creation of fictitious social media accounts. The AI-enhanced software generated authentic-looking personas of various nationalities to post disinformation about several countries, including the US, Poland, Germany, Netherlands, Spain, Ukraine, and Israel. Attorney General Merrick Garland stated, with these actions, the Justice Department has disrupted a Russian government-backed AI-enabled propaganda campaign to use a bot farm to spread disinformation in the United States and abroad. FBI Director, both of which will no longer be in position soon, has said today's actions represent a first in disrupting a Russian-sponsored generative AI enhancement social media bot farm. He added that Russia intended to use a bot farm to disseminate AI-generated foreign disinformation, scaling their work with the assistance of AI to undermine our partners in Ukraine and influence geopolitical narratives favourable to the Russian government. Anyway, this operation was carried out with Dutch and Canadian security forces as well. So good stuff there. Right, we are going to go to, because this is an information war that we are all involved in, but particularly in the United States, where you've got these news outlets that are enabling really dodgy propaganda from Russia to find purchase on the American public, and they don't really call out people who spout pro-Russian propaganda on their network, apart from sometimes they do. So I said to you earlier that Brian Kilmeade of Fox and Friends, I don't like him at all, and I don't like Fox and Friends, and I think there's huge problems with them. But Brian Kilmeade is interestingly, he knows his Ukraine war, and he's on the right side, and he does occasionally call people to, he checks people and says, actually, no, this is the case, and that's the case, and etc., etc. And that's really good. And here he's interviewing on his radio show on Fox News, Jack Keane, who is a Fox News senior strategic analyst. I think he's also involved in the Institute for the Study of War. And Jack Keane is on point here. This is a really good, it's a almost 17-minute interview. Well worth listening to all of this. Very, very good interview this. Jack Keane says an awful lot of stuff that is absolutely right. And he's not one of these people who just slags off the Biden administration because, it's cool to do so and it's easy to do so. He says, like, this is what's been happening, that could have been better, blah, blah, blah. This is what the Trump administration needs to do. This is what Putin's like. This is what Putin's looking for, etc., etc. It's just a really good interview.
Want some recognition that what is really happening here. The only guy that doesn't want the war to end, Brian, is Putin.
So this is on the back of him. So I've gone to almost 3 minutes into this, and he's explaining to you what's going on. He says, look, everyone wants peace. The US want peace. Ukraine want peace. Zelensky wants peace. The Europeans want peace. Everyone wants peace. The only person that doesn't want peace is Putin. So don't be fooled.
Trump wants it to end. Zelensky wants it to end. The people in Ukraine want it to end. Putin doesn't want it to end. Why? Because he wants to topple the regime and put a stooge in and have him run the country and absorb the Ukrainian military as part of Russia in terms of a force that they can use. That's where he is. And he would look at any ceasefire and peace agreement, just as he looked at the Minsk agreement, just as he looked at multiple ceasefires in Syria. He would see that as a temporary impasse, and he would reposition forces during that agreement, violate the agreement. He's always violated all the others. The evidence is clear.
Honestly, don't be fooled by who Putin claims he is, or by what pro-Russian appeasers say of Putin and of Russia, and that we should do this and we should do that. We need to be very clear-eyed about how Putin has broken every agreement he's previously agreed to. This man will not hold to a ceasefire. This man will use any kind of negotiation or period of negotiation and ceasefire to his advantage.
Reposition forces, take advantage. In Syria, no air attacks supposed to take place, was constantly doing air attacks during ceasefire. And he would never, ever give up on his goals. So the Trump team's got to understand where Putin is really coming from. He's a war-fighting commander. He's very different from the Putin 4 years ago when President Trump was talking to him. Obviously the same person, but his responsibilities are different. And he's gone to a war-footing economy, but he's struggling significantly.
And he goes on to say, look, the economy is in a real state there, and then goes on to say this.
Central banks not being properly sanctioned. They could have brought him to his knees. The economy is worsening under the weight of the war. So what I see is we should go in there with our wind at our back, trying to favor Ukraine in these negotiations, get the best.
This is brilliant, right? So he is of the mind, as I would be, and hopefully you would be, which is if you are the incoming American administration, don't put the brakes on Don't say, right, you need to get down to a negotiation right now when Ukraine are just like, hang on, Russia are just about to capitulate economically. They could collapse from within. We are now making Neptune missiles and Palantir drones and attack drones at scale. We're now getting the money in. If we're getting that $50 billion in underwritten loans from the G7, if we're getting this from there, we're getting that from there, and this kind of equipment and missiles and the rest of the $61 billion aid package from the US, we're in a position actually to force Russia to be in a worse position at the negotiating table. Like, this is when America should come, like the Trump administration should come in and say, right, you've got the wind in your sails, we've got the wind in our sails. Really, we were in a position of power here. Russia seems to be in a position of weakness, in all honesty, and we need to make sure that you eke out as much from this situation as possible before we force you to negotiations.
Best deal for them, but let some of the facts roll out and
That's
not
the point.
rush into this thing, and make certain that we can put additional pressure on Putin to give Ukraine some leverage. What am I talking about? Let Ukraine continue to go in, remove the restrictions on the weapons completely, and let Ukraine use the U.S. weapons and the British cruise missiles and the French cruise missiles against the Russian forces. Give Ukraine additional leverage as opposed to rushing right into negotiations.
And that's a breath of fresh air, because we're so used to hearing from wingnuts like Carlson and the MAGA group, and was so used to hearing people like Vance say stuff that is just militarily naive, and I think politically naive and simplistic, and just talk about, oh, we want peace, everyone wants peace, let's force them to peace. Or actually, Putin's not interested in peace, and Ukraine are possibly on the edge of being able to take advantage of a growing sense of Russian weakness here. Although it's not looking good on the front lines in terms of territory being taken, the Russians are losing stuff hand over fist. And so, really interesting interview there. I'm just going to play one more little bit. Wary. This is Brian Kilmeade. I love what Brian Kilmeade says here, because you just don't hear this. I've just heard Candace Owens call what did she call Zelensky, a homosexual moron or something like that? And we hear Tucker Carlson and Elon Musk talk about Zelensky in horrifically derogatory terms. This is Brian Kilmeade, a Fox and Friends anchor, saying it how it should be said.
And that's what he needs going forward if we're going to make a deal.
I'm just so impressed with him, General. For some reason,
Zelensky.
People like to say negative things about him through war. I wish I could be half the leader he has been. A guy spent most of his time in theater prior to this. Lastly, I just want to talk about the Pentagon.
Just, it's so nice to hear him just say really positive things about Zelensky. I wish I could be half the leader he is. Just thank you, Brian Kilmeade. And I never, ever thought I'd ever say those words. Never thought I'd say that. But credit where credit is due, and damn it, it's due there. I mean, that's what we should expect. That should just be bog standard rhetoric. And yet, here I am waxing lyrical about a Fox News anchor because he's saying the right thing. Hungary vows to help Trump. So, okay, let's then go back to the other side of the coin here, which is, okay, what's really going on? Well, Hungary are pressuring Trump and his administration to end the war quickly, to force them to a negotiation. So Hungary vows to help, scare quotes, help Trump quickly end the war in Ukraine. Foreign Minister Peter Shihito claims peace, quote, has never seemed so close, adding, we're doing everything to make Trump's goal of ending this war a reality. You bet your bottom dollar you are, just so you can start getting money back for oil. You can start trading again with Russia, and get Russian gas can flow through Ukraine and into your country. That, yeah, whatever, Peter. Now, Anton Gerashchenko here reporting on Tucker Carlson. So we know that Tucker Carlson has just gone and done an interview with Sergei Lavrov, who we saw earlier at the OSCE conference in Moscow, because Tucker Carlson, I just don't even like his face. Tucker Carlson is just a mouthpiece of Putin. Russian Telegram channels are filled with rumors, so this may not be true. right? But there are rumors that during his visit to Moscow, Tucker Carlson might have agreed to an interview with another war criminal, Bashar al-Assad. So Assad was in Moscow, has been in Moscow, running away basically from Syria. His family had been taken to Moscow and he's been in and out of Moscow. The Syrian dictator allegedly happened to be staying at the same hotel, and Carlson arranged to speak with Assad, though it is unclear whether the interview was already recorded or only planned. My goodness, it's like Tulsi Gabbard on steroids, Tucker Carlson there. So there you go. And then Republicans against Trump here saying it's beyond ridiculous to hear Tucker complaining that President Zelensky, so this is, I'm not going to play him, this is his spiel that I didn't play the other day. But it's beyond ridiculous to hear Tucker complaining that President Zelensky refused him an interview after Tucker called Zelensky a Ukrainian pimp and said he dressed like a manager at a strip club and blamed him for Putin's invasion of Ukraine. You want to interview me? Sod off, mate. But then, the problem is Tucker Carlson then just goes to Putin and Lavrov and just obsequiously cozies up to the worst of the world. Right, we're now going to go to Joe Rogan. So this is this information war we're involved in, where unfortunately the people with the greatest reach are the people that are not interested in truth and are interested in pro-Russian appeasement. And we got Joe Rogan interviewing a guy called Mike Benz, who's a conservative crusader against online censorship. He's got a secret history as an alt-right persona. So this guy, don't like him. Full stop. End of. In my book, this is a bad guy, right? So this is who Joe Rogan gets on to his show to talk about Ukraine. Brilliant. How about going to a freaking Ukrainian expert or a Ukrainian to talk about Ukraine? No, you refuse to get Zelensky on. But you take on this guy who then spreads disinformation about Ukraine. It's freaking disgusting, and Joe Rogan is a prime expletive. Timothy Ash says, I don't know much about Joe Rogan, but as someone who's covered Ukraine for 35 years, this is all lies. This is all Russian propaganda. Openly, he says. We've got someone else. This is Christian Boris says, Elon and Rogan have successfully replaced Russia Today and become full-blown Russian propagandists. There's really no other way to look at it. They are promoting this demonstrably false garbage to tens of millions on a daily basis now, with more effect than RT ever had. So Elon Musk then retweeting stuff that this Mike Benz is saying that is disinformation. It is not good enough. Elon Musk is a bad human. Tucker Carlson is a bad human. Joe Rogan is becoming a bad human. They need to sort themselves out, or we need to somehow not enable them to have the world's biggest megaphones. And yet they all do. It is deeply depressing. Okay. What we're going to do is do a bit of fact-checking of this interview. Dr. Ian Garner does this and then just dip into an article about it, or about the whole context. Let's take these absurd claims apart one more time, says Dr. Ian Garner. It started in 2014 with the Ukraine coup and then the counter-coup. It was not a coup. This is such a common Russian talking point. A largely peaceful process, which was supported nationwide, ended when the Ukrainian president ordered protesters killed and then fled the country. Quote, in 2014, we had about 25 years of successful free speech diplomacy, and then we successfully overthrew the government of Ukraine. Unless we are Ukrainians, then we didn't do anything. So the idea that the US overthrew the government is just so wrong. Protesters, quote, surrounded the parliament building and ran the democratically elected government out of office. See point 1. Protesters protest, forces open fire, president flees. Go and watch Winter on Fire for a start as a documentary. You might get a better idea of what happened in the Maidan protests. Quote, but then the eastern side of Ukraine completely broke away and they didn't respect this new US installed government. You missed Russia sending troops into eastern Ukraine, not a US installed government, see above. Crimea voted in a referendum to join the Russian Federation. Not a referendum. If it's organised in 2 weeks, there's no free speech, you love that stuff, and there are invading soldiers with guns outside the voting booth. That referendum was the most dodgy referendum of all time. Quote, which set in motion events that would end the concept of free speech diplomacy. How the hell is this connected to the above? Quote, NATO formally declared that it was no longer just about tanks, but it was about controlling tweets. And then Brexit happened in June 2016. Now we're just piling together random points as propagandists love to do, disturb the mind and some rapid fire gibberish. Quote, the very next month, NATO added hybrid warfare to its formal charter, basically authorizing the military, diplomatic sphere and intelligence world to take control of social media. Control of social media is not what hybrid warfare is. Quote, then, 5 months later, Trump won the election while being called a Russian asset so that all that infrastructure was redirected home to the US. Somehow, Victoria Nuland giving somebody a bottle of water in Kiev has ended free speech in America. Got you. Not mad at all. And it's, so on and so forth. This is not who you want to be spreading, scare quotes, information about Ukraine. It's really problematic. Right. Okay. So we have a Substack here by Olga Lautman, Why Western Media Must Do Better Against Russian Propaganda and Trump's Authoritarianism. So if there's one thing Russia understands better than the West, it's how to manipulate narratives. For decades, the Kremlin has expertly played Western media like a fiddle, using it to amplify fear, spread disinformation and launder propaganda to global audiences. The same goes for Trump. My biggest frustration, Western media keeps falling for it again and again. The same outlets that pride themselves on holding power to account end up serving as unwitting megaphones for Russian disinformation campaigns. This isn't just a failure of journalism, it's a gift to autocrats everywhere. But Russia isn't the only player benefiting from this dynamic. Here at home, Trump's authoritarian rhetoric and anti-democratic actions are normalized in the same ways, with the media treating his dangerous tactics as mere political theatre instead of existential threats to democracy. With Trump returning to power soon, the stakes couldn't be higher. The time for neutrality, sensationalism and both sidesism reporting is over. If the media doesn't get its act together, it risks enabling a new era of authoritarianism, both foreign and domestic. Thus far, the media has failed to protect America from a looming dictatorship by treating existential threats to democracy as political theatre, downplaying autocratic rhetoric and amplifying disinformation. The press has inadvertently paved the way for the erosion of democratic norms. The stakes are too high, and without a drastic shift, the media will become complicit in the dismantling of the very freedoms it relies on to operate. So, just to give you a sense of what's going on here, when you just talk about, that's just Trump's bombastic rhetoric, when he says, I'm going to be a dictator for a day, and then promptly starts putting things in place in order to do just that, like the media need to hold into account, but they're kind of either afraid to, or the main media is on his side and enabling this to happen. And you've just got this impotent media landscape that allows him to say ridiculous things, and it gets normalized. Oh, that's just Trump. Oh, that's just Trump. Oh, that's just Trump. And then, oh my goodness, actually loads of autocratic things have just taken place because I was just sitting there going, oh, that's just Trump. Now, the Kremlin knows exactly how to weaponize Western media. It floods the information space with bombastic claims, nuclear threats, hypersonic missiles, and world-ending scenarios, and sits back while Western outlets breathlessly report them without context or skepticism. Take the recent deployment. So this is like the opposite happens with Russia. So Putin gets to say bombastic things, and everyone runs around going, clutching their pearls, going, oh my goodness, this is absolutely terrible. The world is going to end. Trump says it, you're like, oh, it's only Trump. And then Trump actually does it, and then Putin doesn't do it, and you're like, what's going on here? So the recent deployment of the experimental Oreshnik ballistic missile in Ukraine, Russia's message was clear: be afraid. But the truth, the strike was less about military capability, more about psychological warfare. The Kremlin choreographed every aspect of the operation to amplify fear, from the missile strike itself to the viral footage and the media frenzy that followed. Headlines screamed about Russia's new superweapon. Still, few bothered to highlight the reality. The Oreshnik is experimental, its stockpile is limited, and its deployment was more a PR stunt than a military game changer. Whenever media outlets regurgitate Kremlin talking points, and look at Joe Rogan, look at Tucker Carlson, look at potentially Lex Friedman's going to go to Russia and Moscow and interview Putin now. Look at all of these regurgitation of Kremlin talking points without analysis. They do the Kremlin's job. They disseminate Russia's lies, stoke unnecessary fear, and demoralize the very audiences that need to stay resilient. And so it goes on. I mean, this is a really great piece. What needs to change? So let's look at this. Western media must do better if it's to effectively counter disinformation and authoritarianism. First, journalists must scrutinize their sources with greater care. If a story aligns too neatly with Kremlin or Trump agendas, it's essential to ask why and report on it critically without amplifying its motives or giving it undue credibility. Context is also vital. Reporting the what isn't enough. Audiences need to understand the why. Whether it's Russia's nuclear saber rattling or Trump's attacks on the institutions, the strategy behind the rhetoric must be explained. I was going to digress and talk about the guy that's in charge of Project 2025, basically Heritage Foundation, Justin Roberts, interviewed the other day, and my goodness, by Unheard. And the stuff he was saying about like what he's going to do to universities and defunding and all this, and like you are going to see these typical autocracy 101 mechanisms be employed. Anyway, additionally, the media must stop amplifying propaganda under the guise of sensationalism. Headlines should inform, not stoke fear, and every word must be chosen with responsibility. Anti-democratic behaviour should also be called out for what it is. Trump's threats to jail opponents or dismantle institutions aren't just controversial tactics, they are autocratic. A well-informed public remains the strongest defence against disinformation and authoritarianism. So all of our mainstream media outlets are responsible, I think, for taking on Russian talking points and regurgitating them and sensationalising the threats, because, you know, that's part of how they get clicks and get paid. But this is truly irresponsible. Really great piece there. Now, Lex Friedman, as I mentioned, who's going to go and interview Zelensky because Joe Rogan refused, said, I hope to interview both Churchill and Hitler likely in January. For this, I'll travel both to London and Berlin. My hope to do my small part to understand the perspectives and to find a path to peace, says Jake Bro, taking the mickey out of him, as in, like, it's not Churchill and Hitler. But these are analogues here. So Lex Friedman says, I hope to interview both Zelensky and Putin, likely in January, because, of course, he will push back on Zelensky on all these points, but he won't do that to Putin. He's going to be interviewing a dictator in Moscow. Is he going to push? Is he going to push him? Nizzy bugger. And my hope is to do my small part to understand their perspectives and to find a path to peace. I understand the risks. P.S. I speak fluent Russian and some Ukrainian. Yeah, brilliant. But by interviewing Putin, you are just going to be platforming his rhetoric and his narrative. Okay, we're going to go on very quickly to Pete Hegseth, who is the nominee for the Department of Defense. Now, that seems to be all going crazy. Last time the Senate formally rejected the president's cabinet nominee came in 1989 when John Tower was denied the honour of becoming George H.W. Bush's defense secretary because of his boozing and womanizing. Time may be linear, but politics is cyclical. So Hegseth billed the hotel rooms used for an affair with his future second wife to his first wife's credit card. He fathered a child out of wedlock with his current spouse, a woman alleged to police Hegseth sexually assaulted her and later paid a settlement. And there are rumours that there's someone else that's going to be coming out as well. That's not looking good as well. Definitely sounds like a guy to put near the top of a chain of command. Quote, NBC News published a story relying on anonymous sources in Fox News who said that they worried about Mr. Hegseth's drinking and smelled alcohol on him as recently as a month ago. So he used to come into work smelling of alcohol. He has apparently come out in public and said that he's not going to drink. So if you've got a nominee that's now saying he's not going to drink because he needs to be on call the whole time, then you know that he knows that he's got a drinking problem, and like you're going to put him in. Anyway, it's all highly controversial. 10 employees. NBC News reported Tuesday that Hegseth's drinking concerned his colleagues at Fox News, according to 10 current and former Fox employees. At times, before going on air, colleagues had said he smelled of alcohol and talked about being hungover, etc., etc. So he is a really controversial choice. Now, it appears that Ron DeSantis might well get to be his replacement. And a lot of people will be fine with that, I think. You then get Lara Trump running for the Senate appointment in Florida, where DeSantis presently is. So I think Trump would get a lot out of that. But I'd certainly say DeSantis would be at least a better choice than Hegseth. I'm not saying he's going to be a good choice, because it is, after all, Ron DeSantis. Now, Phillips O'Brien are worrying. I mean, this is important for Ukraine. You got to understand, Secretary of Defense is super important. And if you get, the problem is, both Hegseth and DeSantis are not exactly big fans of Ukraine. So Phillips O'Brien, a worrying development. Mark Zaid says Trump-nominated FBI Director Kash Patel is thin-skinned. His lawyers just sent me a letter threatening to sue my client, Olivia Troy. So Olivia Troy is a former Trump administration official who went over to the Democrats for this election, has been really outspoken, criticizing Trump. So what's really interesting is that Kash Patel is supposed to be this free speech, going to be in the FBI, and is going to close people down. And here, he's literally got lawyers to try and close her down so she can't use her freedom of speech. Regarding perceived criticism, which was far tamer than any others have publicly said. Why her? Signals what is about to begin on January the 20th. This is lawfare, retaliation, and chaos. So trying to shut her down from being able to speak out against Kash Patel. If you think it's going to be anything other than retribution, and the FBI has got so much to do. The FBI, CIA, DOD, they need to be thinking about the major threats to American national security, and it's not someone like Olivia Troy. So if you spend your time worrying about stuff like that, that's a dereliction of duty. You've got Russia. Go and listen to David Lammy. He's got it right. Where Russia's got its hand in everything. So there you go. And yeah, here just to add a little bit to that. So Department of Justice want to know why Elon Musk was so quick to help Trump win and why he said he might be in jail if Trump lost. Musk's company is facing criminal investigations in the United States over its autopilot technology. The Justice Department has been investigating potential criminal charges related to the system since 2022. And of course, you've got SEC and FCC investigations as well, which began after more than a dozen accidents were attributed to the autopilot, which Elon Musk described in 2015 as probably better than a human driver. Musk and Tesla's repeated autopilot crashes may have led drivers to over-rely on a system that, as multiple crashes allegedly caused by Tesla's driving AI have shown, is not much better than a drunk raccoon driving a clown car. Now, Trump's DOJ will most likely drop these criminal investigations. And so, you're starting to get this sense that, I don't know, there's corruption, oligarchy, you've got bro-oligarchy. It's all very problematic, and it's all a distraction from what should be the biggest challenges to the US, which, obviously, you're going to have the economy and so on and so forth, the usual challenges any country has. But we've got massive international security challenges that should be at the top of the agenda. And Russia disinforming the world with information warfare, attacking the world with cyber warfare, and you can throw China, Iran, and North Korea into that, and then attacking the world with conventional warfare. That's what we need to be concentrating on, instead of, allowing the most rich and powerful people to become even richer and even more powerful. Thanks for watching. I had to split this into two. In the end, as you found out, I've realized this halfway through recording, because there's just too much content. It's the nature of the world at the moment. There is so much going on. Anyway, take care, guys, and I'll speak to you soon. Please remember to subscribe, and then we can hit the 50,139 that I'm trying to hit by the 2nd of January. You guys can do it. Cheers. Take care. Toodle pips.